All right. Welcome back,
Hey,
everybody. Welcome back.
what's
Welcome
going
back to
on?
the show. Yeah. It's Alamo,
In Mick. I don't know why
episode 003. Back in my day.
I said it like that. That's so good.
I had to whip out Grandpa Simpson on everybody, man. Back in
Good old
my
Abe.
day.
Good old Abe, man. So for
I
those
once
of you
jumped
that are
on a
coming back,
grenade.
oh gosh, for those of you that are coming back and checking out the show again, welcome back. Thank you for checking us out. This is the Battle Bros podcast with Mac and Alamo. For those of you that are just joining us, welcome to the Thunder. I'm sorry, that's wrong. Welcome to the Bro Zone, peoples.
Mhm.
What's
Yeah,
going on?
yeah.
Hold on to your butts. So
Hold
anyway,
on to your butts.
oh
my God.
So if you're joining us for the first time, this is a podcast featuring myself and my good friend Alamo here. We've known each other since high school. We don't get a lot accomplished together because we're screwing around constantly.
Yeah.
So the fact that we're putting on and producing a podcast is no small feat. So
Indeed.
don't be lost on that. So we started this podcast a couple weeks ago. This is our third podcast that we're putting on. This is episode 003 entitled
Back in my day.
Perfect. Great. That's fantastic. What we're doing, we're talking about a couple of things regarding the military. So the first episode was just kind of our general synopsis about what we're doing, what we're talking about. Episode 2 was called Call to Arms, and we were talking about what inspired us and kind of motivated us to join the military. So today, for back in my day, and I'm not even going to try to do the voice of Abe as well as my co-host here, we're going to just talk about the military, being, after basic training graduation, going to our unit, going to
After graduation.
after graduation and such. Going to our unit, learning about the stuff, learning about, the heritage of the unit, going and talking about experiences, stories. We're going to try not to be quite so long-winded this time because last episode was a little bit on the longer side. And for those folks that are joining us for the first time, if you want to check out our old episodes, you can check them out anywhere you can find podcasts for the most part. Spotify, you can go on the Anchor app, which is actually how we're producing and putting out this podcast to everybody right now. You can also go on to YouTube. It's on iTunes. Is that correct, Alamo?
It is on Apple Podcasts, yes.
Apple Podcasts. So there's quite a few places you can go and check it out. If you kind of want to go back and get caught up with us so far, we really appreciate that. Before we get started, though, we have to give a special shout out because I neglected to do this last time.
Yes.
Okay. I'm totally going to take the
It
burn
wasn't
on
just
that.
you, man. It wasn't just you, man. We forgot to. I forgot to.
But I brought this up, and then I was just like, oh, crap. Since we got off the air for episode 2, it's like, oh, shit. So this is a special shout out to Cheryl Lovelace. Cheryl Lovelace became our 100th listener. So this special shout out for you. We want to say thank you so much. It's amazing how we've only put out 3 podcasts and we're already up above 120 right now. So for everybody that's followed us, thank you for showing a little bit of faith in us. That's awesome. I promise you we're going to try to do this better every single time we get on here. This is something that even though we're having fun, we're taking it serious and we want to put out, a good show and have everybody entertained and hopefully learn some stuff. So, but again, Cheryl, shout outs for you. Thank you so much. Listener number 100. So awesome. So, all right. So that's pretty much takes care of the intro, man. So like we talked about in the last episode, we were talking about basic training leading up to what, going back and talking about what brought us into the military. For both of us, it was, pretty big component of that was 9/11 because that happened when we were in high school together. From there, going through basic training, what we experienced, what we went through, it was different for everybody, I'm sure. So that ended with graduation, and now we're talking about going to the unit. So Alamo, I'm going to let you start off this one because you went to your unit, a little bit of a story there. With reflag and all that kind of stuff. So go for it, my man.
I started out when I went to my unit, when I graduated, I actually had some time off. I stayed through Thanksgiving and whatnot. I had a little bit of time to, take a breather before I went to the unit, start getting some training done. Then in like early-ish December, I ended up going to my first duty station, which was up in Washington State. That was Fort Lewis, Washington, out there by Tacoma. For
It's
a
called
lot of
something different now, right? Isn't it? It's Joint Base Lewis McChord now,
joint
right?
joint base Lewis McChord, right?
So
Back
for
then
the
it wasn't
folks,
like that, yeah.
right? For the folks that don't know, one of the things that happened within the last, I want to say, within the last 10 years for certain, every so often the government comes out with this thing called BRAC, and it's called, it stands for Base Realignment and Closure. So what they did this last go around is they kind of took different geographical areas where they have a bunch of different bases in close proximity, and they kind of unified the chain of command. So you'll have an installation commander, and then you'll have, somebody who is the post commander for Fort Lewis, and you'll have another post commander for McChord Air Force Base. Like the entire San Antonio area is just Joint Base San Antonio, because you've got Fort Sam Houston, you've got a couple other ones there as well. I don't know all the details, and it just seems to kind of help to unify things a little bit easier, kind of pool resources, pool budgets, I guess. I don't know. I'm not a general or anybody that has a special little flag on their car that you have to salute and stuff when you go by, but yeah, it seems to work. But anyway,
I think it's just down to more feasibility and just more ease of knowing where your guys are.
Absolutely.
I think it's probably just down to that. They just wanted to make it easy.
Makes sense.
At least
anyway,
it seems to me.
I digress. I interrupted, so please continue your story there.
No problemo. So yeah, I going through, obviously the holiday, the guys that I was gonna start training with, they hadn't even they were on holiday vacation. So when I got to the unit, everything was empty.
They were on Christmas exodus.
Because they had just gotten back from Mosul.
Oh, so they were on block leave.
They were on block leave. Yeah, they had just gotten back from Mosul. I had just gotten back. I had just gotten to the unit right as they had gotten back. That was first the 24th Infantry Deuce 4. Yeah, it was Strawberry Patch, baby. And I was in that unit for some time.
Lightning.
That's right. I was in that unit for some time, right about, I would say, probably, and that was about 2005. That was about December of 2005. We trained for a little bit in, like, say, early, probably January through March and whatnot. Basically just, kind of like deployment prep. All the guys that I trained with there, it was basically, let's start getting these guys ready to go where we know where we went, because we went through some shit when we were over there. So we got to start prepping these guys, all these young cats, all these greens.
Spreading the wealth of knowledge.
That's right. Spreading the wealth of knowledge.
Nice.
Fun fact.
This was not your first trip to Thailand?
Fun fact, though, when we as Mortarmen, as 11 Charlies, when we went to Iraq, we didn't actually use our mortars all that much. I think if we used our mortars maybe 3 to 4 times, that would have been like probably the understatement of the year. Because honestly, what it came down to was just collateral. So when you're on the ground in a place like Iraq, you're on the ground as doing 11B stuff. You're doing freaking GROPO stuff, ground pounding, fucking doing patrols, walking around, doing the good stuff, kicking indoors, all that shit. So
let me stop you real quick. By the way, just a quick note for everybody watching at home. Due to the fact that we are telling some service-connected stories, there may be a little bit of salty language. So parental discretion is advised. So now that we got that out of the way, continue your freaking story.
So yeah, fun fact aside, yeah, we basically started training up, man. I mean, that was the first thing. Once the guys got back, that was the first thing we started doing. A lot of the guys that were in the platoon that I was in at the time started transitioning out. And a lot of the guys stayed. It really depended. I know that there were a couple of guys, like a couple of the senior NCOs that were there. They left, went to different duty stations. A couple of guys that made it to like E4ish. They decided they were going to re-enlist or just, like I said, just transition out. One guy we had just went back home to California. Um, right around, I would say, July-ish, I think, is when the unit began to reflag, because we were being redesignated as a QRF, and we needed a unit that was basically fast to respond, which is why they reflagged us to 3-2 Cav. They needed a QRF unit, which is why we ended up becoming 3rd Squadron of the 2nd Cavalry.
So, quick question. When you were at Deuce 4, were you already a striker unit?
We were already a striker unit, yes.
Okay.
We were a striker brigade. And but when when they gave, like, I mean, good God. A lot of what happened with the reflagging is we ended up getting a lot of new vehicles. Some old ones, but a lot of new ones. Like a lot of new ones. And from there, because I guess 3-2 was always kind of more so of a European theater unit, we ended up being transitioned over to Germany, in the Vilsic area of Rose Barracks over by Grafenwöhr training area, which is, Germany's a hell of a country, man. Let me tell you. At least back when I was there, Germany was a hell of fun. When we got there, the unfortunate part was that a lot of the other squadrons were already kind of giving a 2nd Cav a really bad rep. Like, we were kind of known as the Destructo kids. So before we even moved over there, yeah, we're talking about bar fights, freaking breaking windows and shit. Like, it was bad.
You're inheriting the heritage of the bad behavior from the guys before you.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Okay.
But I mean, the unit itself, I mean, was freaking got so much freaking history behind it. I mean, hell, the unit for its service, and I'm blanking on the campaign, but it was a campaign where we assisted France, was awarded the Fleur de Lis. We were awarded the I guess maybe not the ability, but the right, I guess, to wear the Fleur de Lis on our unit patch, which not a lot of units were actually given that honor. Because to the French, the Fleur de Lis is something to be revered. It's not I'm not gonna say it. It's a thing of honor to have that that Fleur de Lis on whatever you're flying.
Gotcha.
So yeah, man. It all in all was a great unit, man. In the transition from basic to going to a unit that, hey, bro, you could die. Where we're going. You need to know that we got to prepare you to fight. And we had a lot of good leaders, man. We had a lot of good leaders. I would say some probably not so good ones. Some funny guys, but I think that would probably be something that'd be better for probably another episode or so, because there's a lot of good funny stories I could go into, but I'm not going to because I want to save us some time. But yeah, man, it was a heck of a different place, though. I mean, the laxness was like from basic to unit, which I mean was to be expected, but also, having been where they'd been, they also had a discipline about when it's time to work, it's time to work.
Sure.
You know what I mean? So Yeah, man.
So let me ask you this quick question, Alamo. So would you say there was when you went from Deuce 4 over to 3-2, was there a pretty marked difference between the leadership styles, the culture of the different units, or were a lot of the guys going to the new unit so it kind of carried over?
A lot of the guys that we had in our platoon transitioned over with us. So there were like I said, there were a couple of guys that stayed in Fort Lewis because they didn't want to leave state. They didn't want to leave the states. But then there were guys that were like, "Hey, Germany, yeah, German beer." So, but it was kind of, I would say it was kind of an even wash, just because of how many guys we got in the platoon, you know. And it was funny to hear so many guys. Like I was literally the only guy to actually get my blood rifles. You know, nobody else did. Which again, blood rifles, another thing we could discuss later on. They stopped doing it because of hazing. Yeah, we were one of the last cycles.
Fascinating. Well, we're going to talk about that in another episode for sure. We don't want to give away. We don't want to give away all the good juicy deets and stuff.
Yeah.
In episode 3, we got to spread this stuff out and make it last. So
yes.
So there was some guys that carried over with you over to Germany.
Oh, absolutely.
To 3-2. Okay. Mm-hmm. And that must now. What were the benefits of that? Just being able to stay with some of the same guys, kind of having that cohesion of a platoon or whatnot.
Well, in all honesty, I thought it was just, with them being there and, some of the guys coming over with us, I would say that it ended up being more of a, well, I guess cohesive would be a good way of saying it. But I would also say it was far more structured because with a lot of the same guys being there still, we were able to kind of keep the same. We were able to kind of, I guess, stay along a certain guideline, if that makes sense. We did switch platoon sergeants. I would say probably 2 months before we left. Like 2 months before we left, we got a new platoon sergeant. Everybody been talking about him. He was from Alpha Company, former Alpha Company. And he was probably one of the best, mortar squads that were, in that company. And he transitioned over to our platoon to be our platoon sergeant for the mortar platoon. Is there
a reason why you say mortar as opposed to just mortar? Is there a joke behind that I'm not privy to? Or okay.
It's good. We'll cover it eventually.
Yeah, I got you. And then you guys ended up going to Iraq, and you were there for, I believe you said 15 months.
Yeah, it was a 15-month tour. We stayed for 12 of those months. 1.5 was essentially like forward units transitioning over, things like supply, all that good stuff. They would go over first. And then obviously the main units would just kind of drive in, which is us, and we would go in there. We were on the first cycle out. We were on the first cycle going in, and we were on the last cycle going out.
Gotcha.
We were PRF stuff.
Gotcha. Okay. So you were over there for 15 months. I'm sure you had, a multitude of experiences like anybody does when they go over there.
Yeah.
And then how long did you came back to Germany, and how long were you there until you left 3-2?
We got back to Germany in October of 2008.
Okay.
We left. We arrived in Iraq in October of 2007. So, like I said, about 12-ish months is what that was our basically our. You got to remember, this was during the last surge back in like the late double O's. You know what I mean? So. When the
late 2000s is what you were trying to say.
The late 2000s, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. I said double O's because of the 2 zeros in the middle, but never mind. Yeah, didn't catch the joke.
No. Let's just try along, okay?
Rear. But yeah, so it was it was a hella interesting, which we'll get into combat and things like that. I think another show.
Sure.
Yeah.
So you came back to Germany in October of 08, and then how long were you there? Did you
We
remain
were
in
there.
Germany?
I was there from probably from October to February of the next year.
And then you came home permanently?
And then I came home permanently, February of that next year. Yeah.
Okay. And then, so my next question is, was it an immediate transition to you going into the reserves, or did you wait a little bit of time? What kind of drove that decision?
What drove that decision was I would be home and I would go to work, and I found myself either drinking or playing video games all the time. And I was like, I'm really, really fucking bored. So I said to myself, I was like, I knew I shouldn't have gotten out fully. And I contacted the IRR rep that I was in contact with. I don't remember his name now, but I contacted the IRR rep and I told him, hey, I'd like to go into either the National Guard or the reserves and maybe try and reclass or something. And he was like, okay. And there went that, which led me into going to an MP unit in the United States Army Reserves, 320th MP unit out of St. Pete. No, I do not have my MP badge. They did not train me.
They sell replicas out there. You could probably get one just to display.
I would say that going from active duty to a reserve unit was a freaking shock, because I was surprised how, like, training wise, there wasn't exactly a great organization. I will say, however, though, that unit had just transitioned back as well, probably about 8 or so months before I'd gotten there. They had just gotten back from, I believe it was Iraq. They had gone to Iraq.
Okay. So they were in their dwell cycle anyway.
Yeah, they were in their dwell cycle. Yeah. Okay. So for me, like anytime I would go in, there was always like nobody there practically. Like nobody started actually coming back until probably like November of that year, like November of 09. And I was like, oh, hey, how's it going, everybody?
Hi.
my retraining to become the funny thing was, though, because I had combat experience, they utilized what the training that I did have quite often, because I guess they recognized that I had experience that a lot of the green boys did not, which that unit ended up like having a whole bunch of green come in. Like I would say probably around, holy shnikes, probably around February. I think it was around February of 10. They started getting in a bunch, and I mean a bunch of new guys.
Yeah.
And, they needed good guys that had experience to train them. And, I was one of those guys.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I'm going to kind of double tap on that when I talk about, my stuff. But I'm glad you brought that up, because that's a key point that I want to tell you about, that I want to mention. But please continue.
But so I served with them for a little bit. Had some issues with the training sergeant, which again we'll get into in another episode because we want to save some time. And I could go on about that.
Sneak peek, folks. There's some good content there.
Yeah. So, so again, like I said, I helped train them up. First sergeant wanted to keep me, but I mean, around that time, I had just gotten married, or excuse me, I was getting ready. Or wait, hold on, I'm having a brain fart. No, I had just gotten married, and
by the way, your wife's probably listening to this, going, That's a damn shame.
Yeah, probably. But when I found out she was pregnant, there was no way I was going to a war zone. You know,
Yeah, I got you.
there was no way I was going back there. When I found out, I was like, oh well, I could possibly miss out on the birth of my kid. So, First Sergeant, thank you, but nah.
Pop smoke.
Yeah, pretty much.
Gown. Yep.
That was around. I think that was around September of 12 is when I actually fully got out.
Gotcha. Okay.
So it was interesting, though. It was interesting.
Oh yeah, there's always good experiences.
Lots of fun. Lots of fun. How about you there, Macatech?
So, okay. So I graduated basic training in September of 03. I went home, and the first time, so I joined an infantry unit in the National Guard. It was Charlie Company, 2nd Battalion, 124th Infantry Regiment. Now, at the time, it was 2003, that whole battalion was activated to go, and they were actually in Iraq. Now, for some of the lineage of that unit is that those guys actually dug through the berm on the border from, I believe, it was either Jordan or Kuwait. I should know that. I don't. I'm sorry. But they dug through the berm with a bunch of other dudes, like some SF guys, British SAS, I think OGA, some other alphabet soup organizations, and they actually broke the berm and were the first conventional troops on the ground in Iraq and all that stuff. So when I got there, it was just everybody that was getting filled in fell into Delta Company of the same battalion, which was just the rear detachment. So we had a ass load of people show up, kind of like what you were talking about. And I showed up at the armory to kind of get my first to get all my stuff, and they were like, listen, you're brand new, just go to supply, get your initial issue, your draw all your equipment for the field and whatnot, and then come back next month. I'm like, okay. So did that, came back the first month, and I would say for probably the first year. Now, mind you, as a National Guardsman, you know, if you're not familiar with how that works, you go for 1 weekend a month, excuse me. And then you go 2 weeks in the middle of the year for what they call annual training. I'm pretty sure the reserves have something similar. I don't know if it's the same thing nowadays, because I've heard some reports and heard some stories from guys that are still in where they're doing a little bit different training schedule and whatnot. But again, that's, you know, down the road for a future episode. So, yeah. But for like the first, I want to say 9 or 10 drills, we would go out in the field. Sometimes it was at the home station armory, which at the time Charlie Company was in Orlando. So Charlie was at the same armory as HHC of our same battalion. So it was over in Orlando off of, I believe, Fern Creek Avenue, I think. It's been a long time, so I don't remember. But which is funny because I remember thinking, like, you got this National Guard armory, and it's kind of a little bit, I mean, it's not the nicest neighborhood, but it's a little bit kind of like, you know, it's kind of like, it's like anybody, you know, you hear a guy say about Bragg all the time. As soon as you drive off of Bragg, you're in Fayetteville. It's just like, whoa. I mean, even MacDill, like the area down there by MacDill in Tampa, it's a little bit sketchy. It's like, you know, but anyway, I just kind of found that funny. So it's like, whatever. So yeah, every time we would go to drill, we would do, and as infantry guys, you know this, battle drill 1 alpha, squad attack. And that's all we would do for training cycle. And we did that for like a year. And it's because, you know, all the main unit, the majority of the main body of the battalion was over in Iraq and all that kind of stuff. And then, so let's see, when they came back in 2004, and it was cool to have everybody come back. But the really crappy thing for these guys was right at the beginning of 2004, during hurricane season, it was like halfway through the year or so, maybe, I forget exactly when, but they just gotten home from Iraq, and some of these guys spent 18 months over there. This is like when everything first kicked off. They came home, and then next thing you know, oh, hey, by the way, sorry, you're getting activated for state active duty for, you know, that kind of junk. And we were gone, I think, for like 3 months because there was like 4 big hurricanes. There was Charlie, there was Francis, there was Ivan, and there was Gene. It was, I think they called it Operation Gulf Winds at the time, but we went all over the state. We went from Orlando over and up into Kissimmee. We went into like the northern part of Florida. I mean, it was cool. It was a cool experience because like that's kind of what we're known for, is going out there and helping the crowd. And like, it's a cool feeling to have, people have had their homes or their lives uprooted and destroyed from storms or something else. And you're just out there, they see you in your uniform representing the best of everybody. It's kind of like a cool feeling. So there was that. And then once that happened, we kind of picked up a regular training schedule. I would say regular meaning typical, go out into the woods, go on bivouac, go and do different types of stuff. Do, a little bit of land nav, ruck marching, the kind of the typical, what you would think of when you go to a drill weekend. Yeah. So then we found out there was a deployment coming up to Afghanistan in 2005. And at first they asked for volunteers. And I was like, I want to go. So, if we're not going to go over and do some stuff, like, what's the point of doing this? So I was like, whatever. So we got put into, they ended up calling us Echo Company because we were just kind of all the guys that were going over so they could have maintain the integrity of the line companies, Alpha through Delta, HHC, and all that kind of stuff. But we ended up calling ourselves Easy Company because at the time, Band of Brothers had become extremely popular. We're like, we're Easy Company. Yeah. It's just like one of those little things you do, like, all right, it's cool. It's probably a little nerdy on the outside, but hey, it's badass. So we went over, and what we pretty much ended up doing for our deployment in Afghanistan is we were part of a battalion task force. We were called Task Force Scorpion. And it was pretty much a bunch of different soldiers from all throughout the 53rd Brigade. There were 2 parts of the mission that we had going over. Is that there were a lot of the senior NCOs and officers ended up doing the ETT mission, the embedded training teams with the Afghan Army. And then our battalion was in charge of physical base security. So we were the security forces battalion at all the different bases around Afghanistan. In my company, we had engineers, we had field artillery guys, we had an infantry platoon. So when we got in country, they took the infantry platoon and just said, whoop, and just kicked us out away from the flagpole, out of Camp Phoenix. Not kicked us out, but they just assigned us to another part of the country. We were up in the north part, up in Mez. Really pretty country, like just beautiful. Like you see the mountain ranges and how the sun comes up and the sun sets over there. It's gorgeous. Anybody that'll tell you that's been to Afghanistan, it's just amazing. Like the scenery over there is just wonderful. Like of all the stuff that's happened over there, it was so beautiful, and the people were just, for the most part, were so nice. So we were over there. We were located at a base up in Mazar-e Sharif, or Mez as we called it for short. And we had a small section of the base. It was an Afghan National Army base with us. I think they call it the Falcon Corps. I forget the numerals of the unit, but it was a corps of the Afghan Army. And all the officers and stuff that we served with were guys that were from the Tennessee Guard. They were from the 196th Field Artillery Brigade, and they were responsible for training all those folks in their different jobs, infantry, field artillery, all that kind of stuff.
Now, does that mean that they were part of your brigade and like kind of attached to you at the same time? Or?
They deployed with us. I don't know, because at the time, when I went over, it was Combined Joint Task Force Phoenix 4. Sorry, I'm getting a little dry mouth here. Hold on.
Indeed.
Kind of wet the whistle. The 53rd Brigade was pretty much the unit that was earmarked for that particular mission. There were other units that went with us. We had some Tennessee Guard guys that went with us, and it was a pretty cool learning experience because you just have different MOSs around you. You have, different guys, that just have different experiences and whatnot. And it was kind of cool just to work with a different group of people. Where we were at, we also had for the first 6 months, there was a couple different groups, and then the second 6 months, there was another group of special forces guys come through. We had some that were with an active duty group, I believe it was third group, and then on the second 6 months, we had some guys that came through that were National Guard soldiers, just like us. So there's a lot of similarities there, which is pretty cool. You can definitely tell that difference between active duty and National Guard. The mentalities, the training, just the training methodologies, all that kind of stuff. Not good, bad at all. It's just different in their own right. So we did that. It was funny because we left to go over there on July 4th of 05, and then we left country to come home on July 4th of 06. So came home, did that. Once we got home, we had a little bit of dwell time. We had like 3 months off. And went back to the same unit, and then after a while I switched and went to a different company in my battalion. It was Bravo Company out of Sanford. A lot of the guys I served with switched and went over to that company as well. So it was just nice to stay around those kind of guys, just to kind of maintain those friendships and whatnot. So I was there. I think that was probably like the second half of my initials, my 6 years for when I enlisted for and whatnot.
Speaking of, actually, while you were on that with the transition with the same guys, I forgot a little snippet. There was a squad leader from Ghost Company that ended up coming home and ended up being in the same 320th NP company that I was in.
Really?
For a short period of time. He was there only for a short period of time. But I just remembered that when you started talking about that. I was like,
and here's a story that I remember, and because this actually has to do with both of us. You came home on leave from I think it was either deployment or you came home from somewhere, but you came off the plane and you were sitting with a guy who was an E5 who I went to Afghanistan with. Do you remember that? Because you actually had changed. You had your uniform on, but you changed into some civvies or whatnot. And I saw that dude at the airport. I'm like, oh, hey, no shit. How's it going? And we just kind of waved to each other from afar. But apparently you sat next to him on the plane. He's a pretty good dude. He was in the headquarters section for our company when we went over there and stuff. Good guy. I forget what the hell was his name. I mean, I forget what his name was. He was an E5.
Was it in 06?
I think so.
It might. If it was in 06, that was or was it? Wait, was it 07? When did?
I forget. I just know that you came home on leave and you had actually changed into some civvies because you wore a uniform originally. Then you changed into some civvies on the plane. You had I think you had on like a nice suit. You had like a pocket square and a vest. And I was like, damn, you're looking pretty snazzy, dude.
You know what?
I forget when that was.
It might have been holiday of what was it? Holiday of 08. Because that's when I came home in a nice suit. Yeah.
So small world, man.
Indeed.
So for the second 3-year period of my enlistment, I was with Bravo Company, which is over in Sanford. That was awesome because they had kind of like unofficial motto of like, we train hard, but we play even harder. So, you could definitely tell it was a different type of unit. Like nothing wrong with Charlie Company. There was an awesome unit. There was great leadership in it. Going to Bravo though, like my first sergeant Yeager, he's been retired for a little while now. I believe he's a law enforcement deputy. He's a SWAT deputy somewhere up around, I want to say Ocala or Gainesville. I'm not 100% certain, but this guy was legit. He had been in 2 companies his entire career, and that was Bravo 175. So first battalion, I think it was first 175. Yeah. And then he was Bravo's second to 124. So like he knew his stuff. And yeah, there's a lot of stories that I heard about float around about him, and we'll go into those another time. But just going to that unit, it was really cool because just the mentality of just being like, hey, we're gonna go out here and bust our ass. And take our job professionally and take our job seriously so we can go out there and be professionals. And, you know, at one point while I was there, we ended up having, out of our battalion, we had officer, NCO, and soldier of the year all came out of the same company. And I think we were listed as the best company in our battalion. So it's kind of cool because you get to that level of, you know, you kind of reach that apogee of just like, yes, this is amazing for all intents and purposes. Like, we're kind of awesome. We're the shit. So, you kind of get to that point of just being like, yeah, this is great, you know, and life's good. You know, you kind of get treated a little bit differently and whatnot. And it was really cool. What was interesting about it though, was the company that I had, we had a lot of guys that were prior service Marines. Like the company commander was at one point, my platoon sergeant was, a couple of the guys, one of my buddies, Nunez, shout out Nunez. What's up, man? He joined our squad. He came from active duty Marines and whatnot. It was interesting. They kind of just integrated seamlessly into our unit and whatnot. And it was, you know, because, you know, a lot of them joined for different reasons. We had my platoon leader at one point. He started off as a corporal in the Marine Corps in a heavy weapons company and then became an infantry lieutenant in the Army. So, you know, it wasn't that uncommon to see guys walking around, you know, when we did PT and stuff in Army PT gear, but they'd have like USMC on the back of their the tricep area or on the back of their leg stuff. I'm like, why does that look out of place? But you know, it is what it is. Guys do different stuff all the time. They switch careers and stuff. I mean, hell, they just announced a little while back that, you know, because of the restructuring of the Marine Corps and what's going on in the Pacific, you know, region, they've gotten rid of all of their tank battalions. There are no more Marine tank battalions. So some of these guys have actually gone and switched and came over into the Army just so they could keep in that MOS and that, you know, that career and all that stuff. So
that's crazy. I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's really fascinating. If you go on like We Are the Mighty or Military Times, I know they let you read a couple articles a day for free without having to, you know, subscribe. But there's some really good articles talking about, you know, the CMC, the Commandant Marine Corps, like their vision for, you know, the future engagements that they're going to be getting into. So they've kind of switched, and I think they sent some guys over to Australia and kind of redistributed equipment and all this kind of stuff. They do things a little bit differently. Obviously, it's not good or bad or other. It's just different. So anyway, I digress. But we had some really, really solid leaders. You know, we had some that were kind of like, you know, it's like, okay. But we had some really solid leaders. There's a couple of guys that I'm still, you know, friends with on Facebook that are now in some of the higher echelons or first sergeants. My old squad leader is now the state sergeant major in charge of recruiting for the National Guard. So it's like, holy crap. You know, you see a guy and he used to have a little bit. Now it's like, bleh, it's a lot of stuff. You're like, okay. So, but yeah, overall the experience was good. What was really cool about our unit was that we were called the Seminole Battalion. We actually had permission for the Seminole Tribe of Florida to use their colors and their motto, which is "We will never surrender." So that was like, you know, your what do they call it? When you salute somebody, the greeting and the it's like not the challenge and the response, but like when you salute somebody, you know, we'd always say "Seminole, sir," and they'd respond with "Never surrender," that kind of stuff. Whatever you call it.
I'm having a brain fart on it too, but for ours was "Toujours prêt." Toujours prêt, sir. Carry on.
So, but yeah, it was a fun time, man. It was a great unit. We did some good stuff. You know, like anybody else, I'm sure there was some things that happened that were just kind of goofy. And that kind of leads us into our next bullet point, which is the difference between leadership and leadership.
Shit.
So if you've been around people in the military, in the past few years, you've kind of heard this whole terminology of toxic leadership. And I have a friend of mine who was up at Bragg that ended up happening to one of the NCOs in his company, where he kind of got, you know, pushed out and whatnot because of just not the best practices when it comes to mentoring junior NCOs and junior enlisted soldiers and whatnot. But, you know, there was a couple in my unit. One of the things I had this one guy that I had served with, it's not that he came off as being, you know, he wasn't a jerk or anything like that, but he was one of those guys like, oh, if you're not awesome at it like I am, then you're gonna kind of suffer for it. So just dropping you quick. Like, and this guy knew, I mean, don't get me wrong, this guy was a wealth of knowledge. He could tell you any weapon system in an organic infantry platoon. He could tell you max range, max effective range, you know, rates of fire. Just spout off all these knowledge points that, you know, you should know. And at one time you're just like, man, why in the hell is this guy picking on me? It's 2:00 in the morning. We could either bed down for a little while, but we're out here playing fuck games. So we're gonna.
I haven't heard that term in forever.
For a quick snippet, not to take too much thunder away from later, but we're gonna have an episode in the future where we're just gonna talk about deciphering and translating military jargon into civilian vernacular. So
yeah, pretty much.
Stay tuned. But anyway, but it was just like you could be, you know, taking care of people and all this other stuff. And, you know, maybe I was just not as mature and wise as I am now. But at the same time, it's like you can get that same effect, especially with what I do for my job now, you know, working in behavior therapy and all that kind of stuff. You can do and have the same results by using a completely different methodology. I mean, how many times have you yourself, Alamo, been with some NCO who might have been a 5 or a 6 and just had that chip on his shoulder, had something to prove, and it was just like, come on, dude, really? Like, we get it. You got stripes. You're an NCO. We're not worthy. We're not worthy.
Yeah.
We're scum. We suck. You know,
yeah, it's happened a couple times.
Yeah,
and honestly, I would say that there was a couple leaders that I had that were really good leaders that ended up kind of just playing the game for a little bit. If that makes sense, they would play the game just to kind of, I guess, get that one leader off their back. Which, you know, it is what it is. You know what I mean? Shit happened. You know what I mean?
But yeah, I mean, you know, you and I weren't ever officially in an NCO billet. I mean, I was when I was over in country, I was pretty much an E4 and an E6 billet while my squad leader was on leave, and I was just kind of made temporary squad leader for a couple of months. I mean, I'm not trying to brag or nothing because, you know, I'm not trying to do all that kind of junk. But I mean, I'm sure, you know, as an E5, especially in like an infantry unit, you know, you've got guys in a squad. They're pretty tight. I mean, I know when I was in weapons squad, when I was in Afghanistan, we were all pretty tight for the most part. When I came back home, when I was in my unit, I was in a line squad for a little while. I did a couple of things. I was an RTO for my platoon sergeant at once. And I was part of like technically platoon headquarters, you know, with the platoon leader and the platoon sergeant stuff. But you know, the guys that I was with in the squad, like we were all pretty damn tight. You know, that's the way it's got to be. You know, there was just one guy though. It's just like you always have that one dude, and it's just so rough, and you just wonder. You're just like, why, man? Why do you have? You're just like standing pretty much like, why, Sarge? Why you got to be like that? But you know, the point I was trying to get to was, I'm sure, you know, especially as a squad leader, you've got the platoon sergeant coming down and making sure everything is, you know, trying to follow the training protocols and follow the training schedule and all that stuff. But at the same time, you have to keep them off your back, but you're making sure your guys are trained in your squad as a squad leader. You're making sure things are getting taken care of, all that stuff. So I'm sure there's a balancing act. I mean, I don't know.
Of course, man. Yeah, of course. I mean, we had a squad leader, I mean, which I would call him more of a section leader at the time, that he you know, and I'm trying, I don't want to say names. I want to be as professional about this as I can, but he just there were a lot of issues, and let's just say that when Who, when
If
there
you
were
had to
times
put
when-
it, if you had to put it as a metaphor, his leadership style was like nails on a chalkboard. You're just like,
yeah, yeah. Actually, that's a very good. I would say that's a very, very good analogy because
yeah.
but yeah, not to dime him out though. But
No.
it was a pain. It was a pain to deal with him sometimes.
We're trying to tell stories and pass along knowledge and advice without
Yeah.
diming people out, because I'm not trying to have a confrontation in the middle of a Walmart parking lot where I live. So
yeah, pretty much.
no, but I mean, but let me ask you this question though. Would you say, because I know how I would answer this, would you say that as a soldier or somebody in a position where you have a supervisor over you, team leader, squad leader, all the way up, would you say that it is a safe assessment that you can learn just as much from bad leadership as you can from good, excellent leadership?
Absolutely. You can absolutely. That I don't think there's any way. I don't think there's any other way to learn it other than learning from what I would say leadership and leader shit. I don't think there's I don't think there's any better way, because you learn the good parts from the good leader, and then you learn what not to do from the bad one. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
And that was the thing, that was the one thing that I could honestly say was, because there's ways to do things, and then there's ways not to do things, and then you have people that are good at things, and you have people that are not at things. You have to put those people into positions at the stuff that they are good at.
Right.
And that's how a military unit is. So that's why a military unit's so cohesive, because you put the right people in the right places, right positions, so that you can
ideally
have that kind of function. Ideally, so you can have that kind of functionality.
Sure.
It don't always work out that way, but I would say 90% of the time you get cohesion that is functional, because you got, for the most part, the right people in the right positions.
Agreed.
Which is what I loved about the military so much, and
Absolutely.
I don't like about the private sector so much.
Well, that's a whole can of worms for another episode. But the last thing I wanted to hit on before we close out, you mentioned that you had the squad leader that came over, and it was like a younger guy and whatnot that came over to the 320th with you from 3-2, right?
There were a couple of them that came over with us.
So one of the things that I found very interesting is when I was in, rear detachment with Delta Company, when I first got the unit, and then also kind of going into when we were on state active duty for like 3 or 4 months, there was a lot of junior leadership. So at the time I had a squad leader who was a Spec 4, very salty, very seasoned, and he had served in 3rd Ranger Battalion. And so he knew his stuff. So, I mean, now mind you, we weren't doing the hardest thing in the world, because we're on state active duty orders. We were doing what we call MISCA. I don't know if they call it the same thing when you were in the reserves, but it's military support to civilian authority. So basically,
I think that sounds about right. I think, I don't know if it was necessarily called the same thing, but I know that what you just said is
same concept.
Same concept. Yeah.
And basically what we did when we were up in North Florida was, we would do checkpoints. We would, I remember sitting on a bridge for 12 hours with a couple of Florida highway patrolmen. There was a fire team of 4 of us, and we were supposed to switch off every couple hours. And me and the guy that I was with, Hamilton, on the fire team, like we just stood up all night because we had nothing better to do. And we were just kicking it with these 2 guys, these two troopers from the highway patrol, and we were just literally just out there just smoking and joking, shooting shit. I mean, it was great. You just got somebody else to talk to, somebody else to kind of bend some experiences off of, and all that kind of jazz. But it was great. I thoroughly enjoyed it. But yeah, I mean, my team leader was another E3 who just had been at the unit longer. So like, you're talking very, very junior leadership. If you look at the way that they organize an infantry platoon in the Marine Corps, a oh, it's way different. Like they've got a Lance Corporal, which is an E3. Yeah, E3. Lance Corporal is in charge of a fire team. You got a corporal in charge of a squad, which has 3 fire teams. So there's like 13 dudes in a squad, not just 9.
Yeah.
So
Well,
it's
you usually have as far as I remember in a Marine Corps squad, you usually have at least 2 designated marksmen.
you also have designated marksmen. That's right.
Yeah. Then you got your heavies. You'll have at least 2 of those guys. The Marine Corps is interesting. Let's put it that way. The Marine Corps is interesting.
Oh yeah, just the way that it's funny. You're always talking about listening to Jocko and stuff. I caught a clip of him, and he was doing a podcast with Tim Kennedy, and they were just talking about how the Marines accomplished so much without having the same kind of resources that we had in the Army. Because I mean, for years I used to get our kind of hand-me-downs. Listen, not talking bad about any of the guys out there, jarheads and stuff. We love you.
Leathernecks,
jarheads, whatever you call yourself. Hey man, few the proud, absolutely. So
yeah,
especially those 03 guys, freaking good stuff. But yeah, they were just talking about how they're able to do a lot of stuff with just not the same kind of funding. If you've ever seen Generation Kill, they have a really good explanation of it in one of the first episodes or so. It's like, but they don't give us a lot of stuff, so we stay angry and pissed off. So when we got to go take the objective, we're going to go through and take care of business. And it's like, that's a good way to put that. So
pretty hardcore little statement there, man.
Yeah. If you haven't seen Generation Kill, the series, it's really good. There's obviously a book by, I think the guy's name is Evan Wright. He was a reporter he's a reporter for Rolling Stones, and he got embedded with one of the Force Reconnaissance battalions when they went and pushed all the way through to Baghdad. So it's a 7-part miniseries, but it's really good. So,
yeah.
But yeah, so stayed at the unit, stayed at Bravo Company through 2009. In March, I separated. I did 2 years in IRR, which is Individual Ready Reserve, and just let that time elapse. And 2011, March 11th of 2011, I was all done, which is scary because it's been 10 years since I left the military. And it's just like, where the hell does that time go, dude?
Yeah, I know.
Holy crap. So much life happens that fast, man. It's crazy. So,
and when you have kids, it goes by even
much
faster.
And you got 2. I got a little girl. You got 2 boys. So it's just like, I'm sure there's our own. That's a way to put it.
Yeah.
Did you have anything else you wanted to add, dude? I think we're at the end of our notes here, man.
No, man, I think we're good. Honestly,
awesome.
So next week's episode.
Next week on the Battle Bros podcast.
Next week's episode, I hope you guys tune in. We're looking at transitions and tribulations.
So what we're going to be talking about in this episode is obviously both of us leaving the military. Some of the challenges that come with that, some of the lifestyle changes and whatnot. We're going to kind of take a little bit more of a deeper dive into experiences that we've had, and make sure that if you haven't gone through that, make sure you're aware of what that's like. But also for the guys that have gone through it, or maybe going through it in the future, there's resources out there. There's definitely resources out there that you can use to your advantage to help you out and make life a little bit easier. Not using them. I mean, knowledge is power. Make yourself smart, make yourself aware of what's out there, and use that to your advantage. So,
because that's the thing, man, is like, I mean, we'll discuss it more obviously in the next episode, but the stuff that you go through in combat and everything else, like you're experiencing it with guys that you can talk to about it, and then when you come home, you don't have that support structure, or at least you don't feel you have that support structure. It's here nonetheless. You just have to figure out where to go, where your best resource is to go to get it, and who you can trust. And I say that there's no better places to go than, your brethren. You know what I mean? No better way.
Like we talked about last week, there's a lot of ways you can help yourself out. And I am going to pull up the bros code real quick here, Macho. So bear with me 1 second.
Yep.
I'm just going to cut through where I've got everything up already. So
yeah, man.
I don't know if it'll let me do that or not.
Yep. Go ahead and share it, and I got you.
Okay. Hold on. Still figuring this out, people. Hold on. Boop. All right.
Hey.
All right. So some things to remember, like Alamo was talking about, if you don't have somebody you can talk to, there are resources out there to help you get through those tough times. We came up with the Bros Code, and basically it's just little things to remember to keep yourself mentally in the fight. Okay. Be in Bros Code, be tenacious, don't go through things lightly. If there's a difference between, doing a school project versus doing a school project and getting an A+, and they're like, this is the best of the whole class. Do right. Everything you can do to the best of your ability, and then some, if you're absolutely capable of doing so. Refuse to surrender. There are things that are going to come around and distract you, knock you off course, knock your dick in the dirt, for lack of a better term. Who cares? So what? As long as you can get up, dust yourself off, and then keep moving towards the objective, that's what it's all about. Don't quit. Just don't fucking quit. Period.
Damn right.
Keep yourself
Warrior
upright.
Spirit, baby.
Absolutely. Obliterate your obstacles. Things are going to get in your way to knock you down, to get you distracted, to get you twisted, as the younger kids say, I think, maybe still. I don't know.
Yeah, they still say it. Kind of.
Knock it out of the way, push it down, blow it up with some plastique, with some det cord. Fuck it. Knock it down. Get it out of your way and keep driving on. That's all you can do. By obliterating your obstacles, you refuse to surrender. You refuse to quit. And that's important.
Damn
The most important one of this is seek out a friend. If you don't have somebody you can call, there are places you can call, places you can go to. Listed down below, we have the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, which is 1-800-273-8255. Again, that's 1-800-273-8255. And like I was saying, it's very, very important just to remember. Let me stop sharing. Did it stop? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So, like we were saying, find a group of people. If you can reach out to some of your old military buddies, do it.
Yeah, Facebook and Instagram are there, man, and most of your buddies, pretty much everybody nowadays has a freaking Facebook page. And if you can't get in contact with them, hell, at this point, there's ways to get in contact with somebody, bro. Like there are resources available. Hell, there are pages that have resources.
We live in the technological information age. Everybody's got a phone. Everybody's got access to Facebook and Instagram and all these other social media platforms. Hopefully other people, you can tell somebody, hey, if you're feeling a little down, listen to, and this is not a shameless plug by any stretch, but if you got people that need some help, to say, hey, there's this podcast. It's called Battle Bros. These guys are all about wanting to help veterans find their next mission and helping them to stay themselves in the fight. And that's very
another not so shameless plug, but our Facebook page is open 24/7, so you can drop us messages in the message box or comments on the comment section. So again, there's no excuses, man. Just we're gonna be there. We will respond to your messages if you want to send us out some messages, man. Same thing for those of you who know somebody that's in trouble. Message us, drop us comments, drop us messages. We will respond. We promise you.
And just like we said last week, this right here That's how many veterans commit suicide every day. And it's
Every day.
22 too many. All right.
Way too many.
We recently lost a friend of ours, and that was kind of the catalyst to help get this podcast off the ground. So if we can help somebody that we don't know, as a, you know, if it's somebody we know, somebody we don't know, anybody, if we can help somebody from, you know, making a permanent solution to a temporary problem, like, reach out, get a hold of us. You know, we don't want to see people go through that. We've been there. We've had some, you know, we've both gone through things getting out of the military or while in the military, just gone through some stuff where it's just like, you know, it's rough, you know.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things going on.
Joke, man. Thoughts of suicide is not fun. It's not fun, bro.
No, it can lead you down a bad path. But like we said, reach out, let us know. You know, if we can help, we want to absolutely try to. So that's our guiding mission here, is just to help people out, whether it's getting out of a rut, getting out of a tough spot, finding something they can do in their civilian life to find their next mission, to hit that next objective. You know, that's what we're going for with this podcast. So, but
pick each other up out of the dirt and drive on.
Absolutely. So, all right, man. I think we done hit everything. So,
damn right. So, like we said, tune in next week. Again, transitions, tribulations. It's going to be, it might be a little bit of a rough one, only because we're going to be talking about some stuff that we went through.
Heavy stuff.
Yeah, some heavy stuff. But definitely tune in next week. Try and make sure you follow the Facebook page if you haven't already. Subscribe to this channel. If you haven't subscribed, what are you doing?
And tell your friends about it, man. We think we're pretty awesome.
Exactly.
Please tell your friends about us. We're still new. We're trying to grow this out. Okay?
Yes, yeah, we're trying to grow. And
we would
think
love
about it this way. Think about it this way. If you subscribe to the channel, I'll start doing more voices like Peter Griffin. And I just might whip out the, you know. But yeah. Oh, like I said, every Friday night at 9 p.m. we are live right here on the YubTub, aka YouTube. That's a Mitchell's plug, by the way. That was a great movie. So yeah, man, come and check out the show. We're here, ready to talk to you. Drop some live comments whenever you're here, whenever you tune in live, and we will see you next week. This is Alamo.
Yep. And this is Mac. Here goes with that again. Signing off. See y'all next week. Have a good one. Take care of each other. Be safe.